At EA Play 2019, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order finally showed off a decent chunk of in-game footage, with just under 14 minutes of revealed gameplay showcasing combat, enemies, story, and more.
Visitation is not permitted.
However, with the gameplay, there were naturally a flurry of questions which each of these features had spawned, and it looks like in an attempt to go deeper, StarWars.com have sat down with Respawn's Aaron Contreras, narrative lead on the project. So I am going to give an overview of the interview, breaking down his most interesting comments and giving my thoughts on a few features he touches on too.
Accept the past.
Execute Order 66.
StarWars.com asks, can you set up the story and where Jedi Fallen Order unfolds in the Star Wars timeline? Aaron responds, you play as a Jedi named Cal Kestis, who is on a quest to restore the Jedi Order and survive as he's being hunted by the Imperial Inquisition. It's set between episodes 3 and 4. It's during what we call the Dark Times, when the Empire is totally dominant over the galaxy and there is no hope. It's an authentic Star Wars story. My personal concern is that the quote-unquote dark times have been covered so extensively, narrative-wise, with Rebels and other media. It's also limiting, as you know that Cal isn't, widely at least, successful at bringing the Jedi Order back to prominence. However, The Force Unleashed, which this game seems to derive from heavily, gave a great story during a similar era. So did Star Wars Galaxies, having the Jedi hunted actively if they came out in the open. I think the Inquisitors are a great addition, but would probably prefer an army of dark Jedi like Jedi Outcast versus Force-resistant adepts at every turn, but we'll get into that later. StarWars.com then asks, can you talk about the balance between introducing new characters and locations versus Cal's encounters with existing faces and places from the Star Wars universe? To which Aaron responds, roughly half our locations already exist in the Star Wars universe. In our E3 demo, you deal with the Wookiees over on Kashyyyk, you meet Saw Gerrera and the Wookiee Chieftain, and General Tarful, who is a character in Revenge of the Sith, is mentioned. So we're adding a whole lot of new stuff to Star Wars, but everywhere along the line, we want this to feel like something pulled right out of the cinematic experience. We spend a lot of time trying to get the details right. I think now this is a personally, potentially interesting move. Fleshing out some characters known, however, I'm much more interested in the half unknown to see if they pull off the Knights of the Old Republic level of depth in new locales, characters, and stories to explore. Interestingly, StarWars.com then asks, what can players expect from the lightsaber combat? Is it more button mashy or strategic? Aaron says, our game director characterizes it as thoughtful combat. That's how we approach it. If you just go in blind and start swinging, you'll be successful in some situations against some opponents, but we try to create a combat design where the player thinks about stuff, analyzes the situation, and is aware of what their toolset is at that given point in time. You need to really look at the situation, the environment, the terrain. Do you have the high ground, for example? What an example. What enemies are you facing? What are their capabilities? And then sort of do the right movement at the right time for the best results. In terms of depth versus accessibility, we are really trying to check off both boxes. Obviously, we're making this game for a very broad audience. Star Wars is for everyone in every way. We really believe that on the team and we want to push that. So if you're a Star Wars fan, you can have a really good experience with Fallen Order. At the same time, if you're passionate about gaming, and if you're especially passionate about melee combat games, you have a lot of depth that you can get out of Star Wars Fallen Order. RE Thoughtful Combat, I see this being as kind of like a God of War-like scenario. As I hear from early game changers, the combat feels weighted. Also, to battle the fact that it's on console and PC with cross-platform, it will heavily revolve on timing, counters, and move choices versus complex motions of a mouse and keyboard like, say, Jedi Academy did. I am concerned that Aaron mentions a very broad audience. My favorite titles such as Jedi Knight series, even KOTOR Galaxies or Jedi Power Battles were very unforgiving to a quote-unquote broad audience. They knew their target demo, do not dumb things down and cater to a specific audience. One could counter that and say, well, Mario is a game that caters to a broader audience skill-wise, yet is enjoyable enjoyable, and yes, I agree with that, though that takes incredible talent to pull off. I prefer that if a Star Wars game's narrative is, say, dark, involves espionage, and is adult in tone, that the combat reflects this too with a high skill curve, also dismemberment, but I am a part of the hardcore leaning gamer element he spoke of. StarWars.com says, how will Force powers complement this nuanced lightsaber combat? Aaron responds by saying, I'd say your primary tool and the primary weapon of a Jedi is the lightsaber, but you have an array of Force powers that you can deploy in combat, and you have to use the right power at the right time. Against some opponents, you can sort of knock them around with any ability, but if you watch closely, you'll see in the Purge Trooper fight, the player attempts to use a force pull and the trooper plants his staff into the ground to block it. He then goes with the momentum and flies at the hero and actually gets a hit on him because of that. So there are some abilities that will counter certain force moves. It's all about using the right ability at the right time, and then of course, as a hero goes through the game and his connection to the force deepens, he will develop more powers and have more of an arsenal of abilities to play. Again, this seems to be the inverse of Force Unleashed, which arguably nullified the need of the lightsaber in most instances. Though you could go for that kind of build, really you were a Force juggernaut. This game has toned down the Force wisely in favor of a lightsaber heavy combat, less button mashy, but my biggest concern is, after a while of killing stormtroopers, no matter the armor color or abilities, it becomes a little bland and you want some of that saber on saber action. If Palpatine had a deal where he said, okay, I'm recruiting the one guy out of you dark acolyte wannabes that kills this kid, gets into the dark side, go, and you had assassins spear tackling you for a promotion every 5 seconds with varying scales of abilities, that'd be cool, but we're still to find out about the enemy progression deep in the game, or really any word on the Inquisitors. StarWars.com then says, will those abilities grow and progress through an upgrade system of sort? Aaron shifts out of this question by saying, we don't want to talk too much about progression or the skill system at this point, other than saying we do have one. I will say that we have some force powers that you can make better, and that's driven by the experiences Cal has throughout the game. And then you'll learn whole new force powers at various points throughout the game. So what we do know of the abilities and upgrades is you can upgrade your lightsaber, change saber colors and force abilities through finding chests, and obviously through experience in killing enemies. I believe the skills, it seems, upgrade through combat, but you cannot venture into the dark side abilities. Unfortunately, this was confirmed by them. They made a very big point of calling it Star Wars Jedi : then the game's name, versus, say, Jedi Knight series, where you could branch into either side. This is a very linear story. StarWars.com then says, when not engaged in combat, it looks like Cal does a lot of traversal and exploration. Will platforming be a significant part of the adventure? Aaron answers, platforming and exploration are a huge part of Jedi Fallen Order. It will be a lot of navigation in the environment, like swinging on ropes, climbing up walls, making leaps across chasms, as you make your way through the game. It's the sort of action/adventure DNA that we're putting into the game. He's very much an agile, developing Jedi hero, and he's going to be navigating through the world in very kind of unconventional ways, including the wall run, of course. This again has all the hallmarks of an Uncharted or God of War series, but honestly, as beautiful as the locations are, the enemy encounters and exploration are what carries it so far for me, but I hope that his movement is very much enjoyable, otherwise it is going to take away from the game. I have noticed they've gone for a more parkour and realistic style for Cal and his movement as well. StarWars.com then says, Cal's companion, BD1, is completely new to the Star Wars universe. Can you offer some details on its history and role in the game? Aaron really opens up with this and says, you'll meet BD1 relatively early in the game. He quickly becomes Cal's closest companion because, for a good percentage of time, he's riding around on his back. He's your best pal, and he's going to experience the entire story with you every step of the way. He's an explorer's companion droid, so the depiction of BD1 is relatively uncommon droid. Designed as the perfect companion to somebody who is an explorer or an archaeologist or adventurer who is out in the wild. So if you are a researcher or a scientist who is off on some crazy backwards planet, you have a BD unit with you, and it's sort of there to give you first aid and help in your research. It's a very intentional design of the sort of stuff he's going to do in game. He'll shoot out little stim packs for you, which is how you heal yourself officially. He can scan things in the environment, so if there's some kind of interesting piece of technology technology or weird alien life form that you encounter, BD1 is super excited to run over and scan that sort of thing. That also adds it to your databank, kind of our in-game codex and also a source of player progression. You'll also tweak him and he'll evolve over the course of the game. He obtains an ability called Overcharge, which causes him to overcharge certain technological things, and he can hack doors and do stuff like that. So he's kind of your solution for all things technological going on in the game. Now, BD1 looks more like a fleshed out version of Iden Versio's ID10 droid. He also is going to be your primary heal. Like Dark Souls, you will rely on him but need to reach checkpoints in between, otherwise you run out. So I assume abilities like Force Heal may only come late in the game or not at all, which is going to be brutal in some of the tougher fights. StarWars.com finally asks, is there anything else you can tease for fans anxiously awaiting the game's arrival? Aaron says, I can just say that we've introduced this hero who is kind of on this crazy quest to restore the Jedi Order during the darkest time in galactic histories. There's so much more in both the story and environments and gameplay, and we can't wait to share it with the world. Now, I'm not sure of his impact on the greater story, but we will have to wait till launch for a reveal. For those of you who are interested in buying the game, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is releasing on November 15th. But what is your initial take on the game and features mentioned? Let me know in the comments below. I am, as always, excited to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and until next time, Traveler.
Little help. Need to slice this. No guards. Hey, we're here to free you. You're not alone.
Visitation is not permitted.